The BBC News, Cairo.
And for more on the forces which will shape Egypt's future, I spoke with SamerShehata, Professor of Arab Politics at Georgetown University. Samer, this is a fascinating story which changes day by day. Today's change seems to be that the protests are spreading from the square all over the country, and also crucially involving labor interests.
Well, that's right. And of course they have been all over the country previously, from Alexandria in the north to Sinai and so on. But today, of course, and in fact yesterday, we saw the Suez workers say that they were going to stop working. But today we've seen workers in Helwan, workers in Mahal al-Kubra, in the Delta and other places go on strike and make demands on the state and on their employers.
Has Vice President Suleiman, to the protesters, now become a completely unacceptable figure regarding any transition?
I think that's correct. I think that 6 months ago or so, Mr. Suleiman was looked at with high regard, especially compared to the other possibility presented by the Egyptian regime at the time, which was Gamal Mubarak, President Mubarak's younger son. But of course, since assuming the post of vice president, and in these times, of course, and being really the representative of the Mubarak regime, for the protesters at least, the hundreds of thousands of millions of people in the street, he has become a figure that is unacceptable.
But is that not a dangerous moment at the same time? Because he was potentially a bridge between Hosni Mubarak and the protesters. That's the way he was certainly styled at one stage just a week ago. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. That's
not the case. Because, of course, the basic demand is President Mubarak's removal from power, and that can come in a number of different ways. But as long as Mr. Mubarak is in power, of course, things do not look good for Mr. Suleiman with regards to street credibility.
And he hasn't helped himself by talking about things like Egypt's culture is not ready for democracy, there might be a coup if the demonstrations go on, etc., etc. I mean, how worried are you that this story could end in blood and tears?
Well, of course, there's certainly a possibility of that, and the question of whether time is on the side of the protesters or whether time could potentially lead to some kind of an outcome like that is a very serious issue. So these things are indeterminate. We don't know where it's going. It's not necessarily a democratic paradise after 2 months or after 1 year or after a few years. But the people on the street certainly have some short-term goals, and I think many of them have some longer-term goals as well for what kind of Egypt they want to see.
We see every day that words, especially coming out of this city, this administration, carry enormous consequences. The line coming out of the White House seems to have chopped and changed somewhat in recent weeks. I mean, almost a different emphasis every day. Today, the emphasis is much more on specific changes towards the transition. Is that helpful, or does that hinder?
Well, I think it's helpful if it is an exertion of pressure on Mr. Suleiman, Mr. Tantawi, the Minister of Defense.
But they seem to be backing off earlier in the week.
Well, I think there's you're certainly correct that the administration started on January 25th on a very bad foot, with Secretary Clinton saying that she believed that Egypt was a stable government and it was looking into the interests or the concerns of Egyptians. There's been a transformation. There's no question about that. But the American position now seems to be an orderly transition. And what many people in Egypt read that to mean is that Mr. Suleiman, the vice president, should oversee the process of transition in a constitutional capacity. And that is not the basic demand. That doesn't meet the minimal threshold of what the protesters want.
Fascinating stuff. SamerShehata, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Now to Iraq, where 3 bomb blasts in the oil-rich city of Kirkuk have left at least 6 people dead and dozens injured. The incidents come after a 6-month lull in violence for a city ripe with ethnic tension. A television camera captured the moment that one of the bombs exploded. From Baghdad, here's Jonathan Hay.